everybody to the Right Fit podcast, episode 4, and it's a bit of Who Run the World girls this week. It is a panel full of lovely ladies. We have a Jen, a Jenny, an Alex, and a Maz. I am the Maz part of the equation and your host today. We're going to get stuck into hashtag ad and hashtag spawn. But what I'd love to do with you ladies before we get stuck into all of that is whip around the table and get you guys to just introduce yourselves to anyone that's tuning into this podcast so they can kind of understand a little bit about you and how you ended up sitting on this panel. Let's start with Alex to my left.
Okay, my name is Alexandra Tselios and I am the founder and CEO of the Big Smoke Australia and USA, and we are a media company with about 350 writers, and we are also sort of an agency within that where we represent both brands and writers on our platform.
And when you say writers, I'm doing that in air quotes, which people can't see because it's a podcast. Writers, does that travel well over into the blogosphere space now?
A lot of our writers, we see our whole shtick is that we're not journalists. So a lot of them are bloggers and a lot of them are barristers who happen to write or scientists who happen to write or so it plays in a lot of different spaces.
Okay, that's good. That's a very broad area that you straddle.
So it's a lot of different voices on there.
Okay, cool. Jenny Wong, tell us about your blog.
Yes, my blog is called See.Taste.Do. It's a personal blog that essentially covers anything under the categories of see, taste, and do.
Is it
in Sydney?
All the stuff that you want to see, taste, and do?
Yeah, exactly. It's a curation of things.
What a brilliant idea that was to just go, I just want to go do all this stuff and then I'm going to turn it into my lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just a curation of things I love, essentially.
Great. And how did that start?
It started about 3 years ago, and truthfully,
lie. Tell everyone a big dirty lie.
I was actually organising my wedding.
Really?
And I got really bored organising it. And I thought, I'll set up a blog.
Are you serious?
In the middle of it. Yes, I did.
That's the truth of how it started.
There's a lot of admin involved, and I thought, I need a creative outlet.
Oh, wow. And it's evolved over the last 3 years.
Yep. That's right.
Okay, cool. And we have Jen Bishop in the room as well. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Tell us about what you do.
I am a blogger at Interiors Addict and Reno Addict. I've been blogging for about 6 years. I started off, I'm a journalist by background, newspapers and magazines, and...
What's the worst magazine you worked for?
Well, worst...
It probably doesn't exist anymore, so I feel like you're allowed to say it.
Oh, I've worked for some really boring ones, which is kind of why I started a blog about something I liked. Yeah, I did once work for a magazine called Criminal Justice Management.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyway, the last magazine I was working on was about small business, which was sometimes really interesting, like the entrepreneurial side, and sometimes really boring. And I just love homewares and interiors. I'm not a stylist or a decorator or anything. I have no qualifications in that, but I just loved it.
You just love it.
Decided to start writing about it. In fact, my husband claims that it was his idea.
Probably was. Don't the husbands always have the best ideas, ladies?
And so started it as a, kind of like the same as you said, Jenny, a creative outlet. And after about 18 months, it was just doing really well. And I happened to then get made redundant from my magazine job and decided to give it a go.
Which would have been great because that's what the push in the right direction that you needed, probably.
The push I needed because it was a bit crazy to, I'll go and become a full-time blogger. Wouldn't have happened otherwise, I don't think. And so that's been my full-time job and blog for 4 years now.
Wow. So I know that people are loving this podcast on both sides, on the brand and agency side and also on the influencer side. So for any budding bloggers who are listening to this, I'd love to get a piece of advice from each of you, from the blogging side and from the publishing / brand arm of things, on like how much work do you need to put in and how viable is it? Because I feel like a lot of people have blogs. There's a lot of Tumblr pages, but people aren't quitting their jobs or making full-time careers out of it. So how involved is running a full-time blog? I'll start with you, Jen.
Well, it is a full-time job if you want to make a full-time income from it, I would say. And I have a couple of people that I paid to write for me as well. And before it started making any money, I would say I put nearly as much love and energy into it as I did my full-time job to get it to that point in 18 months that it was at the tipping point that I could, take it to that next level.
Yeah. Jenny, did you find this a similar path for you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's not a full-time job for me, but it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work, but it's because you love doing it, it doesn't feel like work.
Sure.
My main platform is Instagram, and it's very visual, and so I create all my content, and that takes a lot of time, like the photography, the writing, even, the hashtags, all of that. So there's a lot of work involved, but because I love it, it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah. Alex, what are your thoughts? Just a bit of advice, just one point for budding bloggers.
So a lot of bloggers come to us with their articles because they're really excited to get it on a bigger platform. And the interesting thing about it is that they feel that they want to be paid in the same way as a journalist would be paid for their content. And so our response to them has always been around cultivate an audience organically within your own ecosystem before having the expectation of it to be commercialized. You'd think that would be obvious, but you'd be surprised at how many people do not do that. So my thinking around it is, and because we are a commercial platform, is that any blogger should be seeing it as creating an ecosystem.
Right. And that, I suppose, is what you ladies were saying, is if you're doing something because you're passionate about it, because it's authentic to you, then it's going to make sense for you to do it. And it's not going to be this overarching effort or out of the box. You've got to bend your personality to fit it. And is that what you look for when people come to you?
Yes, but just on that note, I mean, it's one thing to love what you're writing about and love the photos you're taking, but that doesn't necessarily translate commercially. Yeah. And so a lot of people think, well, I really love doing this, and that's great, but it doesn't fall into the category of being monetized yet. And I think that's where we struggle with a lot of bloggers to understand that. So while it's authentic and you put yourself out there, and you will get a following if you do those things because people love that and they connect with that. But from a commercial standpoint, it doesn't always translate, and there's no obligation for it to translate.
Do you think it's almost insane of people to just expect that they could commercialize or monetize their passion for writing about a particular thing?
It's an interesting one. I mean, I see writers as any other art form, filmmakers, and you've got to put those grunt years in where you're
really
not
badly paid or not paid.
You're not being, And I mean, we've all done it. I mean, I spent years prior to the Big Smoke doing stuff unpaid.
Work experience, kids.
Yeah.
Everyone's got to do it.
You do it, and there's almost like now kind of an anger towards not being paid. And I'm like, okay, well, you can be angry about it, but that doesn't push the payment closer to you. So I do think that there is a big discrepancy between people's passions and what they believe is their right to be paid. And I don't think that necessarily matches up.
Okay, that's a really good answer. So you just touched on commercialism and commercializing. We've heard, Jen, that it's a full-time thing for you. There's obviously money coming in the door because you're paying other people to get around your blog. So I want to talk about #ad or #spawn. This has happened over in the US and the UK already, where it's basically being enforced where if you're being paid by a brand or an agency to write on a particular thing, that you need to let your followers or readers or listeners, for example, know that you're being paid to do it. Mm-hmm. So there has to be some level of disclosure of this is a #ad or it's #sponsored. I'll start with Jenny Wong. What has been, so have briefs come through the door for you?
Definitely.
With all of this stuff, what's your response as a writer, as a blogger, as somebody who's doing all your own content? Do you just want to keep doing your own content, or do you kind of go, hey, I can work with that if you're going to slip me some cash for it?
When I first started, a lot of it was creating my own content, based on things that I love to do. And then as you build your profile, your portfolio, people start to see this is what she can do. And then you've got brands
because they want to align with that, right?
Yeah, they go agencies that approach you, you know, where a lot starts off with, you know, we'll invite you to a restaurant and, you know, can you blog about this? Or
is there an expectation on, let's just go through like the plethora of situations, but let's start with restaurant invitation, whether it's the opening or just a free meal. Is there an expectation, because I don't feel like there's contracts in place for stuff like that, that you have to put that or you have to curate content while you're there, or Foodstagram, or whatever it is, or can you just kind of rock up and have an experience and go home?
It actually depends on the PR agency. Most of the time, a lot of them say that, you know, we'd like to invite you along to this event. It's a launch of a new opening restaurant, new menu, or whatever. So it really is up to you. Because my blog is, I have to love it for me to post something about it. If I don't like it,
you're not going to.
I wouldn't post it.
Okay, that's good. That's
and so if I love it, you know, I like the experience, I would post about it. And I would actually say, I was invited to this.
Okay, I get it. Because I feel like there's a lot of people that aren't so honest about the environments that they're in, or the things that they have, or the mentions in an article about renovating somebody's kitchen, for example, which, Jen, you might have found yourself in that kind of a situation. How does it work for you, or how has it worked so far?
I've just 100% from the beginning been transparent about whenever I've been gifted something, paid cash.
Have you been paid in anything weird?
Contra
is a really tricky one.
Contra's
I'm interested
tricky.
in your opinion, because contra is a payment of sorts for
but
an
it's not
exchange
cash.
of
so contra, just for anyone who's listening who's like, what's contra? It's basically like, I'll give you these beauty products if you write a blog about it, or it's that sort of thing. It's like,
I still think you probably should disclose it's gifted
that you haven't gone out and bought it.
It is a grey area. It's definitely a grey area.
Well, what do you think, Alex?
On our platform, we are completely native advertising driven. We don't have any display banners at all.
Okay.
So from a commercial model, it is all articles.
Yeah.
So the way we do it is we say this is an article because in partnership with the brand.
Okay.
And we actually make it very clear up in the top of the byline and at the bottom of it, and there's the call to action.
Yeah.
My rationale around it is I don't believe that it's any less worthwhile than the editorial content that we produce. And so we do say partnerships, and we have links, and it's very clearly a commercial arrangement. But I'm a bit iffy about the whole, you know, you've got product placements and you've got people that, you know, do contra deals. But at the same time, you're watching video clips with product placement in
totally.
No one cares about it.
And nobody cares about it. So I think there needs to be a little bit of an understanding that if you want to access free content, and I'm really passionate about this, if you want to access free content, you have to accept that there are certain things in place that drive that from being sustainable.
Somebody else has had to pay for it to get it in front of your eyes, so you don't have to pay for it.
And I understand that from Jenny's perspective, you know, you want to be authentic and only blog about the stuff you're passionate, and that's really fair because it's your blog. But when you start moving into the more broader publishing,
it blurs the line.
Is not there. And you have to work with brands, and sometimes you work with brilliant brands and difficult brands, and it just depends. So sometimes it is a bit iffy. We have to be careful, and in the way we do navigate it is our partner.
Probably depends as well, like how much your personal brand is caught up in your
exactly, because it's representing you as a person.
Exactly, because I guess mine is very much, you know, I'm the face of it, so I won't take money off someone if I don't like what they do. I don't have to love it, but I just have to know that, because my readers sometimes like things I don't like, but I guess I have to be comfortable that they sell a decent product.
You want to sleep well at night. But you want to put the blog out and go, I'm good with this. Like, I feel okay about this. But
I will never apologise for making money from it, or taking money
and nor should you
give people access to an audience I've really worked hard to build.
But it's authenticity too, because if you were talking, if you were suddenly writing about, and hey, I love this milk, and it's just so random and out of context.
Irrelevant.
Yeah, and they're like, but you're dairy intolerant. That's
weird. But that's when I think the audience goes, hang on, there's something iffy here, and I think that's when there's a backlash to bloggers.
And the backlash can be brutal.
Yeah, I've seen some amazing backlash examples of bloggers, and I think again it comes back to being honest.
Yeah, if you're always honest, and you always say when you've been paid, and you don't get paid to say something that you don't actually believe, then you know, people will still probably be unhappy. There's always someone that's unhappy about something, but you can...
But at least you've covered your ass.
Yeah, and you can feel comfortable in yourself that you've done
But, it doesn't stop you from working with brands. Like, there was an approach that I took, for example, I don't do takeaway food generally, but I had a takeaway company that approached me to do photography. And they said to me, would you be happy to do it? I said, well, that's not really my style, but I'm happy to help you with food photography. And that's a way of commercializing it, but then reposting saying, this is my client.
Yeah, sure.
So you say client and partner, it's kind of in the same
way. This is my client because I've worked with them. I paid for it. And so this is my work. That's another way to approach it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. Alex, you mentioned just before that you had a couple of examples about a bit of a backlash from a blogger. Can you give a specific example without throwing anyone under the bus?
No. When I say backlash, it's not on our site. It's particularly in America. So there's been a number of mummy bloggers specifically who have clearly been paid to promote certain products, and the way that, and it happens with major publishers too. If you go onto a mainstream publisher's website, an advertorial will pop up, and it will say these are 5 reasons why you should be using this credit card. There is no editorial thought into it. It's really boring. Nobody could. That's when the backlash happens, because it's not. One of the things that we're proud of is that we create native content that fits into the site as seamlessly as the debate about politics or the article about, social justice issues or whatever. I think it's just as important to know about why Turnbull's budget is the way it is as to determine what shampoo I should buy. There are all parts of our lives and decisions we have to make.
Got to wash your hair.
Yeah. So we, I think that's, valid. And so I think it's when you're not, again, it comes back to authenticity.
Yeah. Agreed. How do you think, that's what I wanted to ask you ladies. Has there been any rejections? So a brand has come to you and gone, hey, love what you do, think you're awesome, can you promote X, Y, and Z? And you've gone, sorry, that's not for me. And how does that conversation go down?
It's happened with me. I did turn down a big campaign from an alcohol brand. Not so much because I'm anti-alcohol or, definitely not because I'm anti-alcohol, but because I don't feel that's relevant to my blog, which is about interiors. And I feel like if I started talking about alcohol, it's going to really sell out. And it's just irrelevant. So I think that you need to really... I just didn't feel like my readers would resonate with it. Would it actually have any genuine sort of interest in it? So, and I don't know, when I do say no to things, people, they respect that, I think. Well, they don't have a choice. Yeah, well, yeah. But
I can imagine that could be a bit of an ethical issue where you're like, there's an injection of cash that could be coming my way if only I blur these lines. But then you have to come back to your authenticity, what you believe your readers want from your blog, and go, I'm making the captain's call here, and I don't want to publish that.
But do you have ads on your site outside of a brand's alignment with you? So other than a campaign that you'd be doing in partnership, do you actually have AdSense on your site or widgets? No. So you don't monetize your site in any other way?
Just through my own advertising platform and my own...
That you negotiate.
Yeah, there's no sort of third party.
Because one of the things a lot of bloggers do is they do reject campaigns based on that ethical... But then at the same time, they've got Google AdSense, and, I can see ads that they probably wouldn't want to support.
And is that what happens, Alex, when I go into... I won't say which particular website I check most days.
Thebigsmoke.com.au.
I do that, but that doesn't ever annoy me. The one that pisses me off is where I fire up the website and I go to click on an article and then freaking ad pops up. And it's so loud because my computer is on, so loud because I was watching something on my laptop the night before in bed before I fell asleep, and it freaks me out, and then you can't stop the ad, so I just shut down the page and just go to a different website.
So it's an interesting thing because it's a multifaceted revenue stream when it comes to publishers, and it's one of the things we've decided to cut out, which is the pop-ups and the display ads. But in saying that, we do media buying for display ads on other sites. So we'll do a campaign with a brand and we'll go, well, we're not going to put display ads for you on our site, but we'll also, have a relationship with these 10 publishers and so we do tap into it because it is an interesting technology and it is a cheap way of getting in front of audiences, but it's annoying. So as a publisher, I don't want to be associated with it, but as a commercial entity, it's an ad tech that I need to tap into. So it's just about either AdSense or it's a site takeover that they've got with a brand, whatever it might be. There's different reasons why, but it's annoying and it's not sustainable because it really comes back to, first of all, people don't really want to see that. They're not going to click on it. If they do click on it, it's probably an accident.
It's always an accident. It's always an accident.
There was an article in 2016 on Business Insider that said you're more likely to die in a plane crash than purposefully click on ads. There was actually a survey that was done around that.
That has to be the most bang-on fact I've ever heard.
It's a basic problem. And Facebook's really interesting in the way that they've tackled it because you're not dealing with pop-up boxes, but you're dealing with lots and lots of ads in your stream.
Yeah, you are.
So it's just, yeah.
The other day, I swear, I was on Facebook and I was like, did I think that thought or did Facebook tell me to think it?
Yeah,
because it gets in your head.
Yeah, but
it really messes, like the algorithms are messing with me at the moment.
And I'm devil's advocate because on one hand, yeah, it's annoying. On the other hand, it's genius because the truth is,
it is genius.
And actually, this week is the first week that they have had to refund advertisers because they've actually overestimated a lot of the spend. For 2 years, they overestimated views on videos that they were charging advertisers for by 80%. So, it's metrics that are very, murky and not third-party audited. So we're dealing in a very complex digital space at the moment.
Well, I want to talk about how it can be policed, if ever, in a second, because the other thing that just popped into my mind is let's reverse engineer what we were just talking about, brands approaching you guys. Have you guys ever actively approached a brand that you genuinely just love and gone, hey, this is my blog, this is the content that I curate, do you want to jump on board?
Yes. I used to, in the earlier days, I would do that all the time.
Pitching.
But I think that when you become a bit more established and you have a lot of relationships...
It flips back the other way.
So now it's all incoming, whereas I used to have an agency represent me, they would pitch a lot of things. But still, like, to this day, if I saw something and I thought, I'd really like to work with them, or I had a particularly good, campaign idea, I would approach them.
Yeah. Jenny, have you been in that situation?
I have done that. Because it's, I think, initially when it started was one way, you get a lot of invitations, but then so you kind of, your blog is dictated by whoever,
is coming to you.
And I thought, no, I think I want to work with these particular, brands and let's give it a go. What's the worst they can say? No, and
Which is probably the attitude that brands and agency have when they contact bloggers themselves or influencers or whoever is out there doing whatever they're doing in their Twitter sphere. They go, well, the worst thing that can happen is they don't show up to the event and it's no love lost kind of thing because the people that want to be there will hopefully come along and speak positively about their time. So how does this whole world that we kind of all work in randomly and weirdly get policed? I feel like you just cannot because there's so many millions of impressions and articles. There's so much content curated. I read some statistic and it blew my mind so much I can't remember it on the amount of content that goes on Instagram every minute around the world. You might know, Alex. I feel like I'm just going to shut down my Instagram and not bother anymore because I'm like, who the hell's going to give a crap about my selfie?
That's not dramatic. That's a really good response to have.
I'm going to get off. I'm going to get off the grid, start that trend. No, but how it's an overwhelming space. There's so many players. There's people that have zero experience commentating on things that professionals used to. It's such a weird, murky world. I'll start with you on this one, Alex. You probably know a lot more about this than I do, but...
Well, it's an agnostic space for me because one of the things that's interesting is while I'm a big believer in people commenting about issues that they have some vested interest in or background or they've been on the ground. So, for example, when the Martin Place siege happened a few years ago, we didn't have a journalist updating every hour on the site about what happened. We actually had a cab driver who was going to Martin Place, picking up people and taking them away from the dangerous area, write an article about it. So one of the important things to do when you're producing content is to just not be generic, find angles. And there is people out there. There's so many people willing to read content that,
that interests them.
That you just have to shape it. But just in terms of what you're saying about how many impressions there are, the interesting thing from a publishing standpoint or an advertising standpoint is that, yes, we have to deal with the amount of people wanting to get their message out there, and it dilutes the power of your buying power. It dilutes your ability to demand big bucks if you're a blogger, for example, because there are so many people out there that are willing to take less money with similar audience sizes.
Totally.
But the flip side to that is, as an advertiser, you're also dealing with ad fraud. You're dealing with fake bots. You're dealing with websites who, you put out in good faith a campaign with, and you get no transactions because 80% of it is bot. And it's really hard to manage that. There was a video on Facebook the other day about what does a click farm look like in India. And it literally was a room with hundreds and hundreds of iPhones where people are just liking things on Instagram and liking things on Facebook because you can pay $10 for 1,000 likes, right? So it's really difficult to find...
That actually blows my mind.
So this is the thing. Yeah, so one of the guys who runs our creative agency in the Big Smoke is the guy who came up with the Toyota What a Feeling campaign in the 80s, Roger Pugh. So he's old school iconic branding.
He's like a god.
But old iconic, right?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that, though, is you can't fake iconic. You can't have people, and I'm not plugging the brand, by the way. You can't fake that. You can't fake people liking your movie and coming to see it. And you can't fake people buying your product in the store. But you can fake clicks and you can fake likes.
That's
and
it.
so that's when it becomes it's a murky world. And so therefore, from my perspective, you're right, there aren't really any bodies that are bodies as in a governance perspective overseeing it, but there are people trying to, but again, it's, when they find out that you did something wrong, what are you going to do? Get a tap?
Well, that's it. What can you do? Like if somebody got paid $100 to post something on their blog and they didn't write #ad,
get a slap on the wrist and you move on with your life, right?
I mean, I guess we're dealing at the opposite end of the scale with, I'm sure there's some big hectic stuff going down.
Yeah.
$1 million campaigns, for example.
Dentsu agents are currently in a lot of trouble in Japan. I think it's in Japan for about, I think it's $5 million. I could be wrong. That they didn't actually put programmatically into the trading desk to buy impressions. Oops. And somebody in the team admitted to, so then that has to be an investigation, but that had to have someone admitting that something's gone wrong, because how else are you going to find that out?
Yeah.
So it is really complicated, and that's why I think there are metrics that are more important than likes and impressions. There are metrics around engagement. There are metrics around conversions and sales.
That's the buzzword at the moment.
Yeah.
I feel like every week there's a new buzzword in this world, and it's engagement right now, 100%.
Because engagement you can't really fake.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you spend a bit of time looking at the comments and the likes on someone you're working with, and you see that they all say things like, great feed,
thumbs up,
love this, thumbs up. You can very quickly work out that it's fake. So
sorry, I was going to say, I was working with a very large organisation recently, and they probably have enough funding to, when I asked them, how do you choose, bloggers who go to your events, or how do you choose bloggers to work with? They said, we actually run them through, software. We can pick them up.
Wow. The problem,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there is ways to validate the effectiveness of influencer. But I'm
run it through the machine.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm not a believer of that, because I actually believe that they're picking up, again, metrics that they can fake. So, for example, if you're just getting a whole bunch of likes, and going back to what you were just saying about, comments that seem fake, the other issue to that is you might not be paying for likes and comments, but they're still giving you the fake comments because there are other people buying the ability to comment on anything that has hashtags that are in their space. So
there still
has to be a level of manual labor in all of this, because if it's just all through AI, and AI can really help make better decisions and systematically buy on a bigger, and we do use trading desks, so we use AI and we use all that, but you have to have manual labor.
It's just so much.
I think they do that too. They go through the apps and then they pick up, the engagement.
Yeah. I think from an influencer perspective, I think that's why it's good when you get a longer term campaign with a brand, because then they get to know you. They, if you work with someone on over 6 months, you're really going to pick up on whether you're getting authentic engagement and results. And then you come back. So that's when you get the repeat business and bookings and things like that.
Yeah.
I guess that's how brands can really get to know whether it, and have an authentic relationship that lasts more than one sponsored Instagram post.
Well, one post isn't really going to get them the ROI that they think.
Yeah.
Micro-influencers often do better than you know, the Kardashian pose.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. A longer term campaign is the best
the way to go.
But that's the hardest to negotiate a lot of the time because they get nervous and they're like, we'll just do one, and you're like, well, you're not going to get the ROI on that.
Yeah, you've got to do a hard sell almost.
Yeah.
Do you ladies, Jenny and Jen, do you know if you have been followed by bots on your blog? I find that quite interesting that there are just bots that follow stuff and like stuff.
Not a huge amount, I don't think, for some reason.
But some? Do you?
There must be. Yeah, I don't keep much of an eye on who's following me.
So you don't Facebook stalk all of your followers? No, I'm kidding.
Time. But like, yeah, I'm sure there's, you know, everyone's followed by bots, and you know, I get some spammy comments, but I just sort of ignore them.
You can tell when they don't have a profile, or if some foreign country maybe it's like, why are you interested in Australian content? You know,
why do you care about Sydney?
Yeah, so sometimes you can work it out.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Interesting. Do you ladies have any final thoughts on just the whole hashtag ad scenario? And again, I'm looking, I guess, for a little bit of advice on people that maybe aren't currently fully monetizing their blogs, but that might be something that they're working towards.
Just a point that I would make is that my readers really don't care that I make money from my blog. They enjoy reading my content for free and they accept that it's my job. And as long as I'm honest about the fact that I'm working with these brands, which are brands they generally tend to enjoy and buy from anyway.
Yeah.
So, you know, readers aren't as off-put by it as everyone seems to think. So it's better to just be authentic, transparent, and, you know.
And then keep blogging.
Yeah.
Just keep on blogging.
Yeah.
Jenny?
I think it's good that there is this new guideline where you've got to use hashtag ad or sponsored. I know I find it gives a bit more credibility, like from a person that reads blog as well.
That's true. I've actually never considered it, but it does actually. It's almost like that stamp of
like, okay, you know,
this is a commercial deal.
That post wasn't an ad, but this one you've actually disclosed in that. So you know, I know you're pretty authentic. So I personally like it. Yeah, I think it gives a bit more credibility.
Yeah. And then the whole policing thing, that's like an entire podcast in itself that will go for 4 years.
But devil's advocate on the ad thing, if you put a hashtag ad on everything, and I get that the guidelines want us to do it, don't you feel that what could have been a really interesting post gets skimmed over because they go, oh, it's just an ad? Because one of the things we find is that depending on the way, when we manage how people read stuff, if you just put sponsored post, they're like, it's just a sponsored post, I'm not going to read it. But if you actually are compelling and you're actually giving valuable content, the fact that it's an ad, I think it doesn't need to be the main thing just to protect yourself in terms of authenticity. I think there's a balance. And I think some people get so nervous about being credible that they put hashtag ad on everything.
And people start putting hashtag not sponsored.
Yeah.
Because they're worried
I've seen that a lot.
And then people aren't going to read it because...
It's tricky, isn't it? I think
that,
like you
balance.
It's a balance,
if you can make the content just as worthy when it's sponsored as when it isn't, like you were saying before, I think that's kind of how you make it work.
I guess it also comes down to the person's blog whose it is. Because if I genuinely love reading someone's stuff, whether or not it's an ad won't make a difference to whether or not I'll read it.
But would you skim over it though? If, for example, it was a post on a picture which is visually stimulating, if an article was up on the homepage and it said sponsored content and then another, wouldn't you just ignore the sponsored content?
Yeah, you're probably right.
That's just what I'm finding. Less so maybe with Instagram because it's visual. Yeah. But an article, I do that.
It's almost because I was just thinking then, like, if it's a writer that I genuinely love, like this, it's, you know, like back in the day when we all got the newspaper and read that. You get out, you know, the Sunday lift out and you go straight to the back and whoever was writing the funny bit, you'd read it because it's like, that's that person. They're really funny. I love what they do. I feel like I'm in that headspace with somebody's blog or whatever where I'm like, I really love what you do. So I don't care that what you were saying, Jen, I don't care that you're getting paid to do it. I don't care that it's an ad. You're really funny and interesting and I'm going to engage in that and I want that in my world. But I feel like that's a generation of people that grew up with the newspaper and having that.
And are used to it.
Yeah. And now, like millennials and younger, there's not that at all. It's just And because you see people literally like on their phone skimming through stuff, I'm like, you're not reading a thing.
No.
Like you're actually not even looking at the pictures.
Did you?
You're just doing like literally this one motion with your hand that's really robotic and creepy.
But did you know that there was a study that came out a couple of weeks ago that talked about our grey matter in our brains is shrinking because of the amount of Facebook usage that we're doing?
I wouldn't be surprised.
And that our attention span has gone from
possible.
12 seconds to 8 seconds, literally like less than a goldfish.
Yeah. That's
Imagine like
Imagine, yeah. Imagine what we're going to be like in 50
it's got to
years'
turn.
time.
It'll go the other way, guys.
We're going to be reading long...
digital detox is needed.
The world will explode, the internet will die, and we will all have to go and hunt and gather again.
That's not what I want to be part of.
I'm cool with that world. Like, we can all wear dead animal skins and sit around a fire.
Would you do a digital detox?
I actually, this year, funny you should ask, and it's so ironic that I just launched a breakfast show on Facebook. But prior to that, I pretty much unfollowed everyone on Instagram, and I unfollowed all of my friends, which are going to hate me if they're listening to this, on Facebook, so I don't see any of their shit anymore. Yeah. So, because I was just getting overwhelmed, too many babies in my friends' world, so I was like, stop it. And so what I have done on my Facebook feed is I've just subscribed to stuff that I really want in my life. So there's a really cool... it's called Goodful. They do great video recipes. That's pretty much what I cook every night now. And so stuff like that, and Dr. Josh Axe and the minimalism guys. Like I've just sort of skewing my world into sustainability and urban farming and wacky stuff. And there's a few conspiracy theory things in there. But anyway, that's what I like. So now I try my hardest to not, if I'm sitting, I sit and I don't touch my phone. I have a book usually in my bag that I'll try and read. So I'm actually being so conscious of not being that person, but I'm probably one of a handful of people that I know that are probably brave enough to admit that, like, I'm when we all get off the grid, I'm the first one off.
I have no interest in doing a digital detox whatsoever, but I do read books, hard copy books. I could never get into ebooks.
Can't get a Kindle?
No, not interested.
It's interesting, isn't it?
I've got shelves at home with books.
That's like me and my paper diary.
Yeah, I write notes on paper,
out.
Oh, really? So for your appointments and bits and pieces, paper diary.
I hate that whole Google Calendar thing. No thanks.
Yeah, you never miss an appointment with Google Calendar.
I like a week-to-view diary. And sometimes I lose it and get like a...
You get anxiety. I get anxiety when I have no to-do list.
Cool, ladies. Well, I don't think we've solved any of the world's problems, but it was damn interesting talking to you all. Just a friendly reminder, if you like this podcast, then you can rate it and review it in the iTunes Bitsy Pieces. That's the official terminology for how to rate and review podcasts, Bitsy Pieces.